As we headed out from the resort, we made our way to Havana, the capital and the city of unparalleled charm. We went there on the classical car and experienced the city's amazing history, colorful architecture and streets, its iconic landmarks, and its vibrant culture and vibes. Come with us as we journey through Havana, the heart of Cuba. So this is our second day of the Varadero trip. First day we were in this nice resort, shielded in. Now we're actually going to go out and experience Cuba. So our first stop is Havana. So we're going to go and see Havana. Really excited about that. Victor? Yeah. So let's see what happens in our adventure in Havana. See ya. We went to Havana on one of the country's most distinct and beloved feature, the classical and vintage car.
This is a video.
Yeah.
Say something.
On Havana.
The driver, Abuelito.
Okay.
Me, Jesus.
Jesus?
Jesus.
Thus we began our 2.5-hour trip to Cuba's capital city, Havana. On our way, we stopped at an observation deck to see the bridge of Bacunayagua, Cuba's highest and one of its most iconic structures. The bridge opened in 1959 and stands 110 meters tall and stretches 114 meters long. We got the opportunity to see the deep gorge, which is nestled between the Mazantas and the Mayabeki provinces. The observation deck got us to see the stunning panoramic views of the lush tropical landscapes and the Yumuri Valley. While at the lookout, we got fresh and delicious pina coladas and enjoyed the live music. As we passed more vintage cars, we got back in our vehicle and headed out to Havana. On our way, we passed through small towns and villages and admired the green landscapes. While booking this tour, I had provided a list of places I wanted to see. On the way, Jesus, our tour guide, said that the list was too long and it cannot be done in a day. I, of course, pushed back and was determined to see everything in a day. After 2.5 hours of drive, we entered Havana. The first glimpse of the city certainly showed its distinct charm. As my list was long, we had to be strict with time. So our tour guide took us right into the heart of the city, Old Havana. Here we started with a walking tour. Old Havana, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, is like a living museum with a lot to see and observe. Our walking tour began at the Plaza of St. Francis of Assisi, which is a picturesque square steeped in history. We first got attracted to the Conversation, a captivating bronze sculpture which depicts two abstract figures engaged in a dialogue. Next, we headed to the square's centerpiece, the Basilica and Convent of St. Francis of Assisi. We encountered the basilica's impressive colonial architecture, the statue of St. Francis, and the towering bell tower. As we walked down the basilica, we stumbled upon a very enthusiastic and lively street performer.
Che Guevara, aquí se queda la clara, Guiro, la entrañable transparencia, firma aquí, de tu querida presencia, aquí, comandante Che Guevara, Guiro, para suena, la alegría. Comandante Che Guevara, aquí se queda la clara, pero la entrañable transparencia de tu querida presencia, comandante Che Guevara.
With the lively music, we continued to see more of the basilica. The basilica had survived major storms and hurricanes throughout the centuries. We then went further deep into Old Havana, walking on its cobblestone streets, which are lined with pastel-colored buildings. We were led into one of Havana's vibrant and colonial-era squares, the Plaza Vieja. As we made our way to our next landmark, we spotted some elaborate buildings and the Church of St. Francis of Assisi. The church was quite magnificent from the inside than the outside. Further to our walk, we came across some street art, classical cars, and more churches. Subsequently, we entered a street which led us right to the national capital of Cuba. This building certainly showed its grand architecture and its inspirations from the US Capitol and the Pantheon in Paris. Next to the Capitol, we saw another impressive structure, the Grand Theater of Havana. From one striking building to the next, we made a quick stop to the famous El Floridita, which was the writer Ernest Hemingway's favorite bar. We quickly saw it from the inside as we had to press on and had much to see. After passing through another street performer, more public art, colonial buildings, and cobblestone streets, we arrived at the Palace of the Captains General. This historic building served as the residence of the Spanish colonial governors. Over the centuries, it functioned as the governor's residence, presidential palace, and the city hall. We saw the statue of Christopher Columbus and experienced being in the midst of the magnificent facade, limestone walls, and the spacious courtyards. Today, it houses the Museum of the City of Havana, which showcases its artifacts and reflects the city's rich history. From here, we made our way to the Plaza de Armas, the oldest square in the city dating back to the early 16th century. We were quickly surrounded by statues of historical figures and the lush palm trees. Making our way from the various squares and the streets, we found ourselves in front of Havana Cathedral, one of Havana's most iconic landmarks. This masterpiece is built primarily from coral stones extracted right from the Gulf of Mexico. As we made our way inside, we were welcomed with high ceilings, wide spaces, intricate woodwork, and elegant altars adorned with gold and marble. The cathedral is said to have housed the remains of Christopher Columbus over a century before their transfer to Spain. The cathedral concluded our walking tour of Old Havana, and so we walked back to our classical car to continue the rest of the Havana trip, as there was still much to see. On our way, we passed the La Boguita del Medio, a restaurant bar that claims to be the birthplace of the mojito cocktail. Getting back in the car, our tour guide took us to a very touristy and a very exclusive place for a delicious lunch. After lunch, we were off again. First, we drove past the relics of the Cuban Missile Crisis, reminding me of my high school history class. Then we headed nearby to the statue of Christ of Havana. The striking white marble statue stands 20 meters tall. As a protection symbol, the statue overlooks the Havana Bay and offered us panoramic views of the city's skyline. Throughout our trip, our tour guide kept mentioning how important sugarcane is to Cuba, particularly for making rum. That got me thinking that we should get fresh sugarcane juice here. Upon mentioning that, our guide took us to a roadside place to have fresh sugarcane juice. It was just refreshing, juicy, and delicious.
Cheers. Oh, nice. This is beautiful.
Fresh sugarcane juice. Oh, this is so good.
After taking pictures and showing off with the car, we headed to the entrance of the Havana Bay to see the castle of the Three Kings of Morro. The castle is now a museum. The historic fortress was constructed in the 16th century to defend Havana from pirates and foreign invasions. We strolled around its thick stone walls, its fortifications, and past some of its cannons. We also caught sight of the incredible views of the sea. Though not on our list, our tour guide took us to see the outside of the Museum of the Revolution, which was also a former presidential palace. The building is considered by the Cuban people to be an important landmark for the country's revolutionary history. Going back in the car, we drove past the Granma Memorial and other radiant Havana scenes. The next stop was the National Museum of Fine Arts. As we were time constrained, Victor and I flew past its paintings, sculptures, and decorative arts in a whopping 7 minutes. We were again on the road, passing through Havana's classical cars and vibrant avenues and structures. As we passed Chinatown, we then arrived at Havana's most recognizable and symbolic site, the Revolution Square. We stood at this historic site which spans a vast area and is overshadowed by the towering Jose Marti Memorial. We clearly saw the nearby iconic facades of Cuba's national heroes. Following this, it was time to go back to Varadero. We drove past the famous National Hotel, the shoreline, and made our way out of this iconic city. Havana certainly is a place to visit and see. One can leave their heart there. Victor and I really enjoyed walking and being driven on the streets and experiencing its vibrant history, diverse sights, and lively culture. As we were driven back, we caught sights of the sun setting into Cuba's outstanding scenery. After a remarkable day of adventure, we came back to Varadero, tired and exhausted. We had a trip planned for the very next day, where we were headed off to explore 3 other Cuban cities. So that was our Havana trip. Very long and tiring. No energy for a commentary right now. What are you right there commenting right now? You're doing this. Okay.
Guido, hey!